Good morning and welcome to WellSprings. My name is Julie and I'm going to help lead us all in song this morning. It's so great to see so many, I'm assuming you're all smiling under your mask, smiling faces here in Bell Hall. And it's great for you, those of you who are joining us on the streaming video. So happy to have you participate as well. We're going to start off this morning with a song we haven't done in a while. This Land Is Your Land, led by Melissa. Everyone can take a seat. And the next one, we're going to slow it down. Fragile, led by Harry. We can think of all of those hurting and suffering from war right now.
will flow. Flesh and steel are one, dried in the colors of the evening sun. Tomorrow's rain won't wash the stains away, 'cause something in our minds will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant your lifetime's argument. Nothing comes from violence, nothing ever could. For all those born beneath an angry star, lest we forget how fragile we are.
Please rise, whether in body or in spirit, for our final song of this song block, Higher Ground.
Keep on turning, 'cause it won't be too long.
Welcome to WellSprings. No. Oh. Okay. Welcome to WellSprings, take two. Both to those here in person and to everyone joining us online this morning. My name is Chris Grappi. My pronouns are he and his, and I'm honored and blessed to be leading our worship services today. Each week when we gather, we light a chalice as a symbol of our spiritual heritage as Unitarian Universalists. It is not just a symbol of what is past, but of what is present. That divine spark, that inner light that shines at the heart of each of our lives. As we light this chalice, may we share our light with each other and with the world. This morning, we've asked Sarah, Farron, and Elia to come forward to light our chalice. After they've done so, we'll say these words up on the screen together. We light our chalice to celebrate the path lit before us, the warmth of kindness that shines from within us, and the radiance of wisdom that is shared between us and never goes out. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. All these people in this room. So nice to see you. Our mission here at WellSprings is to be a community charged full with the charge of the soul. And I'd like to share with you what's charging my soul lately. And this happened to me about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and it ties in nicely with our theme of neighbors and helpers because I had direct experience with this. So about 12:30 at night, midnight or so, on a Sunday night, like about 5 weeks ago, I'm getting ready to go to bed. It was a little bit late. And the doorbell rings at my house. Now, this is never good on a Sunday night if your doorbell rings. And I go outside, I open the door, and my neighbor is standing there. And he's my next door neighbor, and, we've lived there for like 17 years and everything like that. And he's older, we don't, we have different views about some things, and we probably vote for different people and stuff like that. But he says, "Hey, I think your trash can is on fire." And I'm like, I look out, it was on fire. And, last year I gave out little Christmas tree ornaments that were dumpster fires to my colleagues at work because of the pandemic. And now I had an actual trash can fire because earlier in the day, we have a fireplace and I put my ashes out. I did all the things that I've normally done. Let it sit outside for, whatever. It got rained on and everything else. And yet, so we have a fire extinguisher, which I purchased this year, and thankfully. And my wife came out, and I said, "Call 911." And she said, "What?" I said, "Just call 911. We have a trash can fire." And we put out the fire, and my neighbor was there, and then all the community helpers showed up, the fire police, the fire company, the police, and it was very scary, but it was also, I was very grateful to have such a good neighbor who was putting his trash out at midnight and seeing this. And I didn't realize a trash can that was like 5 feet tall could burn down to the size of like a small cube. So that charged my soul in the sense that we have neighbors that look out for us, whether we know it or not. And there's helpers in the community out there with us, whether we know it or not. And I'm grateful for that this morning. So, this morning, I'd like to especially welcome any newcomers. If this is your first or second time with us, we're so glad you're here. I hope you'll fill out a connection card so you can learn more about us and start to introduce yourself too. If you're watching from home, there's a link to the online connection card in the description below the video. If you're here in person, you can fill out a connection card on your phone through the WellSprings app. See any of the greeters this morning in the back of the room to help you get connected if you need help. If you'd like to interact with folks who are joining online this morning, there's a live chat available on YouTube. Access it, you just need a YouTube or Google account. Just sign in, click the live chat button, and say hello. And finally, you can always find more information about today's service, as well as upcoming news and events through our WellSprings app, or scanning the QR code available on the welcome table just outside the front doors of Bell Hall. And we have a few pieces of news we want to highlight this weekend, so I'm going to turn it over to our membership and communications coordinator, Jessica Heichel.
Hi, WellSprings. My name is Jessica Heichel, and I have a few announcements for you, but first I'm going to turn you over to Heartworks.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, I look forward to it. Oh, I wasn't expecting anybody. I just got back from the Giant. I had to run out to get a few things for a dish I'm making for St. Mary's next week. How'd you get in here anyway? I'm telling you, it's a good thing I had my Giant gift card. Were you aware that using a Giant gift card helps support future Heartwork projects that assist our local communities at no extra cost to you? No, it's really true. How do you get one? Oh, that's easy. Just click on Realm. Under Community, Communications, and News, you'll find the Heartworks Giant Gift Card Program. The order form is attached. Print it out and mail it along with your check and information. You can also grab an order form on the table outside of Bell Hall on Sunday mornings. Online payment options will be offered to you soon. The nice thing is that the cards can be used for the bakery, beer, wine, or the deli, or just regular groceries. Sorry. When you buy Giant gift cards through WellSprings at face value, Heartworks will retain 5% for each card you buy. So will you be staying for dinner? Great. I just need to run out and get a few more groceries. Good thing I have my Giant gift card.
Thanks, Heartworks. I have 3 more announcements for you this week. The first is just a reminder that we are adopting a week of meals for St. Mary's Franciscan Shelter for Families. Reverend Lee will actually be speaking with a representative from St. Mary's today. If you are interested in contributing part of a meal, whether you are looking to cook or whether you are looking to simply buy something to contribute, there is a sign up online where you can indicate which portion of which meal you would like to help with, and we really appreciate that. Second announcement is just a reminder that coming up we have a meeting a week from today to talk more about stewardship called Next Steps. This is not going to be a situation where you are asked to make a decision about your own stewardship. More, this is going to be a conversation about stewardship for the entire congregation, how it has been used so far, how it could be used in the future, and we would love to have your input. So this is happening on Zoom in 2 different meetings. One will be at our usual coffee hour at 11, and the other one will be at 1 o'clock. I will put some info into the chat where you can find out more about this meeting. And our third announcement, just in case you missed it, earlier this week, Reverend Lee and the Board of Trustees put out a video that is sort of a report card about how we are doing thus far on our annual goals about halfway into the year. The video is about 9 minutes long, so I will link that in the chat, and we hope you take a look at it when you have a moment if you haven't seen it already. Thanks so much, everyone, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you. At WellSprings, the foundation of all that we do is rooted in the power of connection, making space in our hearts and our lives for each other. This is the part of the service where we honor that connection by greeting one another. If you're joining from home, take a moment now to share a greeting in the live chat. Maybe say hello in the WellSprings Oasis, our private group on Facebook. For those of us here in Bell Hall, You might also consider posting in the Oasis group to connect with the community beyond these walls. And finally, a reminder for those of us in this room, please ask before hugging or approaching closely. Some of us are more comfortable with a fist bump or elbow bump these days. And if you prefer to keep distance from others for any reason, just stay seated. That'll be our cue to give you a friendly wave from afar. With gratitude for all the ways we may connect, let's greet one another now. Thank you for those warm greetings. Thank you. You're all invited to continue conversations at coffee hour, which will take place right outside on the patio after the service. If you're joining from home, we also have a Zoom coffee hour at 11 a.m. Just click the Zoom link in the video description below. And for those of us here in the room, be sure to check out our 2 Zoom coffee hour stations right outside where you can drop in and say hi to the folks at home. I invite you now into our time of generosity, an opportunity to express our gratitude for the ways this spiritual community has an impact on all of our lives. If you feel the value of our WellSprings community right now, we hope you'll share a gift to help sustain us. If you'd like, you can use your phone to give from anywhere. Just text WSprings to 73256. Our greeters will also be bringing hats around for those who wish to donate by hand, or you can drop a check or cash donation into the box outside on the welcome table. Thank you for all the ways that your gift supports WellSprings, and our offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you. Having shared energy between us and the giving beyond us, let's take some time now and reground into the deep and soulful energy within us. And we do this by doing what is most simple and elemental in our lives. We take a breath, inhaling and exhaling without rush or hurry, breathing in and breathing out. There's nowhere else to go, nowhere else to be, so let us be here together now as we prepare for our time of mindful silence. We follow these words from Thich Nhat Hanh into our time of meditation. If we want to enter heaven on earth, we need only one conscious step and one conscious breath. Let us cultivate peace and experience presence in this quiet time together. Wherever it is that we are, whatever it is that we are doing, however it is that we are feeling, let us remember that peace and presence are always as close to us as our own breath. May this be so for you this moment. May it be so for you this day. May it be so for you in the days to come. And may it be so for all of us. Now, I'd like to invite our youngest members of the congregation to join the staff and volunteers in the back of the room for their time of fellowship in youth spirit. Please send your young ones out with coats and masks. Parents are asked to pick up their children from youth spirit after service. These days, if you don't see them right outside, you'll find them in the Montgomery School Dining Hall. And I'll invite the band back up for our next song.
There's a father working on the line. He has to try his best to do it right each time. He wants to make it home to his family, and the one place he knows how temporary state of grace, at home and in his place, with all the troubles he might face, he keeps on trying. There's a mother worried about her son, such a challenge. Sometimes she feels so done. She wants to love him and help him the best she can, and hopes that someday he'll turn out to be a decent man. In his temporary state of grace, she hopes he'll find his place. With all the troubles he might face, we'll keep on trying, trying. The Constitution, the Golden Rule, these things
Andy wrote that song in the last year. We're so lucky to have such talented musicians, aren't we? Yes. That was for you, while you were busy making sure your guitar was okay. I know, I'll keep an eye on it. Well, gosh, it is good to see you all. Feels like pieces of my heart are back in the right place when it's not just the 10 of us or 12 of us who love each other, but we're getting a little tired of having Julie light the chalice every week. So this is actually the final Sunday in our winter message series. Spring is coming. Yes. Let's cheer for all good things today, right? Spring. But this is the final Sunday of our winter message series, Neighbors and Helpers. And I've loved this series. I've actually heard from a lot of you that you've enjoyed it as well. So if you hated it, speak up and let me know, because right now, I'm thinking that we might make this something of a regular practice, maybe once a year, maybe every other year, that we'll continue to invite some outside voices to speak to our congregation, to share our pulpit, and talk with our neighbors about their experiences living right here in this local community that we share. I hope that building these connections helps weave a stronger net between our spiritual community and the various communities that are around us so that we can all be better neighbors and helpers to each other. Hopefully our trash cans don't catch on fire, but for anything that any of us might need whenever we need support in the years ahead. And one of our intentions for this message series, all the way back in the summer, which does feel like a long time ago, of 2021, when our lay leaders and our ministers, as we do every summer, we got together to dream up our plans for worship for the coming year. And one of our intentions, as we thought about the connections we could make in this series, was also to consider our responsibility to each other as neighbors. What does it mean to look around at our world and realize that we do have the power to do something on behalf of someone else, to support someone else? What do we do with that power? And how do we use it well and responsibly? I believe personally that everyone holds some kind of power. And yet power is a touchy subject for many of us because, well, it's powerful. It can make things happen, and it can be dangerous. Think about that third rail on a subway track. If you've ever been in the city, seen a subway station, there's a sign with a big electric lightning bolt on it that says, "Don't touch, stay away." It's a metaphor for those big, powerful subjects that come up in our politics, the third rail, right? The third rail, the powered rail, literally moves things forward. But you don't want to approach it without understanding how it works. Power can be scary, and power can be dangerous. And right now in our world, we see big, terrifying, sad examples of that. We see it on our TV screens, on our phones, on our social media feeds from halfway across the world in Ukraine. We see how when people hoard power, when people use their power, their God-given power, to dominate others, to control, to take more and more and more and more. We see that that kind of power destroys lives, literally. It destroys whole communities. It destroys whole peoples. Power can be used to hurt and harm, and that can happen to anyone. It can be used to hurt anybody. We know that this is true. And yet we also know that there are patterns. And those patterns only get more clear when we have the courage to be curious, to look around at our world, to ask around to our neighbors. We know that there are people and communities and circumstances that mainstream America, whatever that is, does not want to see and recognize. We know that there are systems of power that we can fall into without realizing it. And that if we're not paying attention, sometimes we can end up on the wrong side of history, or at least on the side that doesn't really match our values. So this question came up as we planned this message series about power, about what it means to hold it responsibly, not to hoard it, not to control with it, and also not to disavow it and pretend we don't have it, but rather to share power within our communities, to hold power in partnership, to ally with each other, and to leverage the privilege that we have, the power that we have to pour into places that need support in any given moment. You know, this concept of recognizing our privilege has come up in nearly every one of our conversations with these community partners this winter. Whether privilege for you looks like racial privilege or gender privilege or socioeconomic privilege, it comes up over and over, not because it's some PC buzzword, but because privilege is a form of power. Privilege is a form of power that we can lend to others and share and use for good. If we have privilege, we can use it to heal and to try to make things right where they've gone wrong. Knowing our neighbors, knowing people who have different experiences in life than we do, asking questions about how things work in our society and why, taking an honest look at who we are connected to and disconnected from and why. It all helps us use the power that we have for good. It all helps us share our space well and treat each other well and resist the temptation that we see how dangerous it can be, the temptation to turn each other into enemies or obstacles or ghosts, right? People we don't see at all. Knowing our neighbors may seem like a small place to start in a world with enormous problems. But knowing our neighbors has to come before loving our neighbors. And loving our neighbors truly does lay the foundation for peace. And so we're going to connect with two local communities today. The second is the one that we planned originally, which I will tell you about in a moment. But the first is the Saints Peter and Paul Ukrainian Catholic Church. They are the closest Ukrainian community center to us. They're just down the road, about 15 minutes that way, on the north side of Phoenixville. And they hold two services. They hold Mass twice each weekend. One on Saturdays in English and one on Sunday mornings in Ukrainian. So you know who's in charge in that church. It's the Ukrainian speakers. We have never met them before. But after a week like this one, I have a feeling that they are scared, that they may have loved ones, family, and friends who they are terrified for their safety, that even if they don't have a personal connection or relationship to someone in Ukraine, that it is their land and their home. I'm going to make a modest donation today from our Minister's Assistance Fund to an international aid organization in the name of Saints Peter and Paul Ukrainian Catholic Church. And we'll deliver a bouquet of sunflowers to their community this afternoon, along with a card that I'll put outside by the coffee table for any of you who wish to sign it after the service. It's just one small way of letting our neighbors know that we see them and that we care. The second community that we will connect with today is the one that we already planned. A community that also represents a sometimes touchy subject, the subject of poverty and economic inequality. Now, many of you know, I've heard many of you say, you know the statistic that Chester County ranks on average as the wealthiest county in our state. But averages are tricky things. High numbers pull up low numbers. The minimum wage in Chester County is still $7.25 an hour, just like it is across our whole state. And economic inequality is a significant problem right here in towns and in neighborhoods all around us. So for our final message in this series, I'm going to share with you a conversation I had earlier this week with a woman named Cathy Farrell. Cathy is a case manager at St. Mary's Franciscan Shelter for Homeless Families. This is a shelter that WellSprings has partnered with for years now, and we will again next month to provide a week of meals for the families that they support who live at the shelter. And as we think about the power we all have and the power we can all share, let's remember that there are opportunities always all around us. I'll ask Chris to play the clip, and I'll invite you to listen in on a bit of our conversation now.
Well, Cathy, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to our congregation as part of this series. We're starting every conversation I have with one of our guests. I'm starting by asking a little bit about how you became our neighbor. This series is called Neighbors and Helpers. So I'm curious just to hear a little bit about you to start. Are you from this area originally? And then what made you want to join the organization you do and do the work you do now?
I actually grew up in Delaware County, lived a large chunk of my adult life in Chester County, and now I live in Philadelphia. I'm trying all the counties, apparently. I was raised Catholic, and part of me has always liked helping others. So in my adult life, I've had many career changes. My last career was I was a teacher. I got my teaching degree with 11 children. Yeah. And I decided to go out on my own and tutor. And I was doing that, and that freed me up to do some volunteering. So I volunteered with Home of the Sparrow, which is another nonprofit, if you're familiar with them.
Do they serve primarily families experience domestic violence, or is that just part of it?
That's part of it.
Okay.
They also, one of their big programs is RAP, Women Reentering Society After Prison. Mm-hmm. And they also work with it's all women, working with women who are having trouble staying in their own place. They have a program where they put women together and they can share a place. Mm-hmm. And they also have eviction prevention. So I really got a love of working with people there and decided to make a career of it. So that is when I joined over here at St. Mary's. And
you said you live. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
You said you live in Philadelphia now?
Roxborough, yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's about, I don't know, say 45 minutes. But I start early and leave early to accommodate the traffic getting back and forth to Roxborough.
Up until last year, I actually lived in South Philadelphia. And
Okay, so you know.
I do. The Schuylkill Expressway is our friend and our enemy. Yeah.
No.
When you were a teacher, were you teaching in Delaware County, Chester County, Philly, different places?
I was teaching throughout Chester County. I held several long term. I didn't get my teaching degree until I was about 35 or 36. And I was doing long-term substitutes. But I found that I really enjoyed working one-on-one. I have a reading specialist certification and was working more and more with one-on-one with kids. And I really decided I liked that one-on-one. And that's when I went out on my own to run my own tutoring business. So I did that for 10 years, and I was still doing that here when I was part-time. Now I am full-time, so I have shelved my tutoring for the time being and focused just on this job.
Yeah. So the shelter where you work focuses on families. It's a family shelter. So I imagine you still get some of that one-on-one work with kids and with young people.
Yeah, it's all families here. You have to be a family, and a family could be any composition of a family. We have largely it's women and children, but we've had men with children. We have both parents with children. We've had grandmothers with children. It's whatever the composition happens to be, because we know in this modern day and age, the composition of the family is not your traditional 1950s, let's say.
Right. Yeah, not always leave it to Beaver. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No pearls or anything like that. Everybody is in the same situation in that they're all homeless, but everybody's in particular situation is very, very different for the families who come here. But the only thing that they're all looking for is housing in the long run.
Yeah. Well, and that was a little bit of my next question. What was just that I'm curious to hear a little bit about the families you serve at St. Mary's, and if there were common threads in their stories about how they came to need housing. But it sounds like you feel like that there aren't so many common threads, except that they need housing, that people are coming from all different circumstances and situations.
Yeah, I mean, we have some women who, a lot of them are leaving bad relationships, unfortunately. And it doesn't mean, I mean, a lot of times when we talk about domestic violence, we think just physical abuse. But women are leaving for many, many reasons these days, along with, mental abuse, verbal abuse. And some reach the point, especially when they have babies. We have quite a few women who come through with babies, and they have to leave that horrible situation. So this is kind of like a haven for them. Then with the pandemic, a lot of things changed in that way, in that we have people who just couldn't afford to stay in their places. So we've had
as a job loss or losing hours.
Yeah, all those things. And especially at the very beginning, that has kind of waned a little bit. But for instance, we had a couple who the guy had a great job. The woman was working on her nursing degree. And when the pandemic hit, that was it. They couldn't afford nursing anymore, and he lost his job. So everybody's different in how they arrive. But like I said, in the end, everybody's just hoping to move forward and hopefully be housed when they leave our program.
Yeah. I saw on your website, I think it referenced 8 weeks. And I wasn't sure if that's like a standard. Is that how long housing services are available in general, and why that number?
Although we're affiliated with the county, ours is a private program. And many programs do only allow you to stay 8 to 12 weeks, which is what ours is. Now that's not hard and firm, because if somebody would get into the housing programs, in Chester County, there's 2 main housing programs. There's rapid rehousing and there's Section 8 housing. If you get put into that while you're here and you're trying to find a place, Sister will allow you to stay while you're working through the ins and outs of finding a place. And it's very, very difficult, probably since the pandemic started, to even find houses. People are not renting to lower socioeconomic people. People don't want to work with the county. There's just so few places, and prices have just continued to rise and rise and rise. So it's been very difficult for people.
Yeah, a couple of years back, I had a conversation just privately with I can't remember her last name, Kelly, who runs Open Hearth, which is another social service agency in Phoenixville.
Yes.
And I was surprised. When I was just out of college, I lived in Washington, D.C., and I worked at an agency where we would hear all the time about the long waiting list for Section 8 for the housing vouchers. And so I assumed that was where the rubber met the road in Chester County. And Kelly said, it's really landlords. It's really, unfortunately, it's discrimination. It's that landlords don't want to rent to people who have a housing voucher, even though it's guaranteed payment.
Right.
What a housing voucher represents is that the county's paying most of your rent.
That's right.
But she mentioned that then, she said, if anybody in your congregation is a landlord, owns a place that they rent, please encourage them to look into taking housing vouchers, because that's where the rubber meets the road here generally.
Absolutely. And nobody wants housing built in their neighborhood. It's not in my neighborhood type of thing. So it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. And for like a neighborhood in Phoenixville at one time, which was boarded up windows and things like that before it, gentrified again, the prices then were so inexpensive. St. Mary's has been in business for 35 years, I think now. They always were able to find housing until the gentrification, and now prices have just skyrocketed. And it's, I will almost say the word impossible to get a apartment of any kind for any of our people in Phoenixville and the surrounding areas.
Which is where you're located.
Right? Yep,
Yeah.
right in the center of Phoenixville.
Well, when the families that stay with you are able to find secure housing, what does that pathway out of homelessness typically look like for them? How does that usually happen?
Well, they try to do several. We have we call it a program here. They have several things that they're supposed to be doing while they're here. Finding a job. If they don't have their benefits, we help them get their benefits in place. Getting their kids into school, daycare, whatever the case may be. Getting all those things, almost like getting your ducks in a row. And then hopefully once they do get housing, which takes, it's not like they come in and they're put on a housing list. It takes several weeks. We are working with many nonprofits as well as the county. And we have to make sure that things are kind of lined up for them, because the idea is for them to be successful. The Rapid Rehousing Program is when you're picked up in the Rapid Rehousing Program, you get a referral, and then a locator works with you. And the resident here and the locator and myself are looking for housing. The way that program is, once you find a place, they set you up and they pay approximately 70%. You pay the first 30, the other 30, and they help you get in there. Then over 6 months to a year, they start to pull back. And the idea is for you to be independent. You're also receiving case management services, going through, they're checking in on you, making sure. The last thing they want you to do is get to the end of that period and fail. So the idea is for you to get more independent each and every month. And that's why it's critical that they find some kind of a job and get their kids into whatever schooling that they need.
I think sometimes, I know that when I have talked to folks throughout my life, like I said, in my previous work experience and also in my congregation, I think everyone obviously wants to end homelessness, wants there to be an end to poverty. And there is this sense, though, of resignation or hopelessness about it. I think a lot of people have a feeling that somehow the problem is too big, that it's totally unsolvable. So I'm curious, as somebody who works directly with families, as somebody who's been in different parts of the social service sector, it sounds like too, do you think homelessness is a solvable problem? Let's just say even in Chester County, and where do you think we need to start if we want to solve it?
Well, the housing crunch is probably the number one thing. There
Yeah.
needs to be more housing available, lower priced housing available. But when I say that, I'm not talking about some of the things that some of the people who come from us leave roach infested, rodent infested, horrible low income housing. So there has to be those physical buildings, those physical places that are there for our families. And I don't mean just here, I mean in general.
Yeah.
I will say Chester County does a fantastic job of working with their people. I work with other counties too, and they don't have a lot of the people coming together like Chester County does. And this county works very hard to get people off the street and into something, into some kind of housing, no matter whether it's a shelter or whatever the case may be. The pandemic, they started putting people in hotels just for safety reasons, and they're still in there. We still have, between that and the big flood that we had.
Ida, yeah, I just got an email about that this morning from Chester County Partnership to End Homelessness, saying that there's still 30 families or something like that in my hotels because of Ida. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's approximately, I think, 50 families in hotels right now between Ida and lack of housing. And, people rotate in and out. I would love to say that I'm very hopeful that housing could be resolved, but I'm not sure, because a lot of people see people who are homeless and look at them like they're, for lack of a better word, lepers, instead of people who have hit hard times. Many people are one paycheck away from losing their housing. And I think people forget about that. So I'm hopeful, but I don't know that there is a resolve to this, because in our country in general, I don't know that enough people care to make that a solution, like something that they can work toward. There are a lot of really, really dedicated people who want to solve it. And again, Chester County, in my opinion, does a great job and they do the best they can. But there's just so many people out there who are struggling and people who are hungry, and just it's horrific, really, and just not fair that anybody in this country would be living the way that a lot of people have to.
Not at all. Not when we have so much, when some
Right.
people have so much. Yeah.
Right. It's so uneven, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing this with us, Cathy, because that is, I think, part of what we're hoping to do with this message series, and part of what our community is hoping to do in general. I have talked a lot in this series about how if we don't know somebody who experiences a particular issue, we tend to think of it as an issue. It's something we see on the news. It's something we debate about,
Sure.
what's the right policy, which politician do we like, and their views on it. But all of these issues affect our neighbors. There are people that live in our area.
Absolutely.
There are people, without sharing anything confidential, there are people in our congregation who've been close to losing their homes, who we've been able to support with our emergency fund to pay their rent for a month or two. And sometimes that's all people need. There's a job loss, or there's a crisis issue, and they just need a couple months of support. And so this is an issue that affects people that we know, even if we may not recognize it, because there can be so much stigma around it. Like you said, people don't want to walk around saying, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my house, or I'm afraid I'm going to lose my apartment. So,
Right. And then the hunger issue too. People will put the money to keep the place because they want their family off the street. Then their children are going hungry. So it's such a complicated thing. But when people like you and your congregation are interested in asking the questions and want to be involved in some way, that helps so much. And we have so many churches that support this particular, our shelter particularly. I know they help other ones, but I don't even know how many churches, because there's such a huge amount of them. And it's because people like your congregation who are interested and want to know and say, hey, what can we do to help? So that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Well, I know we're actually signed up to provide the meals for your families, I think the first week of March. So yes,
Wonderful.
for anybody in our congregation.
That's a wonderful thing. It really is so helpful.
Great. Yeah. Anybody who wants to cook, or if you're like me and you hate cooking, I signed up last time around and I bought the bread and I bought the snacks for the kids for school. So that's just an extra trip to Wegmans. That's pretty easy.
Absolutely. And I'm the same way. I'm not much of a cook, but
Yeah.
if there's a night that something's missing, I'll put something in the crock pot.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Mac and cheese is my favorite thing to cook from a box, unfortunately.
I love that.
Oh, Cathy, is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you'd like our congregation to know, especially about the whole topic, but also about how we can support our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness?
Well, I guess I would like to say, coming from the heart, if you see someone and you think that they are in some kind of trouble, whether it be financially, or they look hungry, or their children are looking disheveled, reach out in a friendly manner and say, what can I do to help you? And I know that's not always easy. I mean, I can't say that I've done it every single time that I should have, but reach out. And if you have the dime or the box of juice boxes to spare, donate. Give your time, give your money, give whatever you can, because that's what makes it go round when people want to be involved and help their neighbor the best way they can. And I think there's a lot of that missing in the world today, sadly. So I love when people can come together and help one another. That's like my greatest joy, especially when it involves children, because they're the ones who actually suffer the most in these situations.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Cathy. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
I've enjoyed it, and I'm glad that you reached out. I love to be able to talk to people and tell them what our mission is and where we're going with everything.
Well, Cathy, thank you.
Some of you might know the name Father Gregory Boyle. He's a well-known Catholic priest. He's the founder of the world's largest gang rehabilitation program called Homeboy Industries. And he gave an interview back in 2016 where he talked about the pressure that people of good faith feel, knowing that there is suffering in the world, the pressure that we feel to save the world. And he says, we get that all wrong, because saving the world is impossible for any of us. By its nature, it's completely overwhelming. And it leads to nothing, he says, but a hernia. That's the word he used. It leads to burnout and guilt and hopelessness, which eventually means throwing up our hands, right, and giving up. But Father Boyle says when we savor the world, when we savor the whole world, even the parts that are confusing or that we don't understand, when we savor the whole world, we generate love. We find that love is generated inside of us. Maybe loving our neighbors is at the core of every major religion for a reason. Maybe loving our neighbors is truly the key to making these big, hard changes that we're going to need to make if we care, because they are big and complex and scary and risky changes. But then again, what wouldn't we do for someone we love? Father Boyle says, I talk for that reason a lot about kinship. He says, I say, no kinship, no peace. No kinship, no justice. No kinship, no equality. We've become focused, he says, on peace and justice and equality, when the truth is none of those things can happen unless there is some undergirding sense that we belong to each other. That we belong to each other. And he says the good news is if we focus on kinship, the byproduct will be peace and justice and equality. In the end, Father Boyle says, all mature spirituality is about tenderness. That's the mark of a mature spirituality, because tenderness and love is the connective tissue. It's the only thing that joins us together. And so, friends, wherever you are, if you're here blessedly in this room, or if you're joining us from somewhere far away today, I hope you feel our sense of kinship, our sense that we know and belong to each other. And I hope that you will continue to feel in these days ahead that might be scary, that might be overwhelming. I hope you feel at the same time the sense of joy that comes from savoring all of the gifts of our whole human family. Amen to all of us. And may we all live in blessing. I'm going to invite the band to come up and all of you to join me, if you will, in the spirit of prayer. God of our heart's own language, presence that gave us this life, presence that is with us even in the moments when we feel alone and scared. We pray this morning for safety for all people. We pray for the miracle of hearts that turn to tenderness. We pray for the miracle of soldiers who look in the eyes of citizens and see human beings. We pray for the miracle of strength of people who resist orders to do horrible things. And we pray for the strength closer to home, to take an honest look around us, to see the humans in our human family right nearby, and to take comfort in our kinship connections, to remember how beloved each one of us is, and to remember that that belovedness always includes us as well. For the prayers I've spoken out loud and for the prayers that all of us are carrying on our hearts this morning, we say amen.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. Isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. It's the brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one.
This light goes out, but the spark that is its source is always with us. And together we say, as we release this flame from its faithful service today, we allow the spark in each of us to burn on, to warm our compassion, to fire our delight, and to light our paths today, tomorrow, and always. Oh, it's so good to share space with you again. And it'll be good to share space with you in another week. May you look around at the light and the spark in each person that you see this week. And may they see it in you. With prayers for peace, let's put our hands together one more time. Take us out, guys.